Support for WCBU's On Deck comes from Jaguar Land Rover Peoria on Allen Road, offering complimentary pickup and delivery for service with every new vehicle purchase, including the Land Rover Defender. Details at jaguarlandroverpeoria.com. This is WCBU, Peoria Public Radio.
A new musical comes to the Cornstalk tent. That's just one of the things you'll want to hear about to start your day for Friday, August 2nd. I'm Colin Shope, and this is WCBU's On Deck. First on deck today, Fulton County Mayor's residents and emergency management officials are pushing for federal assistance to recover from severe July storms. Illinois' District 17 Congressman Eric Sorensen visited the county Thursday to see flooded basements and washed-out roads and get a better grasp on the process to get federal recovery funding. Fulton County Emergency Services Disaster Agency Director Chris Helly thinks the current process leaves rural communities without support.
I'm hoping that we can use this as a tool to educate FEMA and our legislators on why the thresholds that we currently face are ridiculous. It's problematic at best. It's not fair to the communities. It's not fair to the people.
This is partially due to the way the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, calculates who is eligible for assistance. Certain damage thresholds have to be met before a disaster proclamation is made. Illinois' statewide threshold is $23.6 million in uninsured damages. Helly argues a rural community can be devastated without coming anywhere close to that number. Sorensen says he plans to advocate for fixes to the system moving forward.
We're getting more of these 4-inch per hour rains. More of those types of heavy rainfall events means that we're going to see more of these types of situations. And so we have to plan ahead.
The Illinois Emergency Management Agency is still totaling the damages from the July 16th storms to apply for a disaster proclamation. Here are some other stories we're following in the WCBU newsroom. A new estimate on the construction timeline for Peoria County's Landfill 3 places its earliest possible opening in spring 2027. And Peoria County is recruiting more poll workers ahead of Election Day. Plus, OSF Healthcare Regional CEO Bob Anderson is retiring. You can find more of these stories and all the details at WCBU.org. Cornstalk Theater is back with another production in the iconic tent with 22 women taking center stage. On this week's episode of Out and About, Dr. May Gilliland Wright of Arts Partners of Central Illinois talks about Nine the Musical with director Chip Joyce. The musical is based on the critically acclaimed 1963 Federico Fellini film 8½. Nine opens tonight at 7:30 p.m. and performances continue August 3rd through 4th and 7th through 10th. Joyce begins by explaining the premise of the movie the musical is based on.
It's the perfect premise to make an American musical out of, if you ask me. But it was all about a director named Guido and just kind of his complicated creative process. He is on the hook to create a movie. His producers are pressuring him to, finish the script, and nothing's really hooked him.
Tell me, how does the film differ from the musical, or how are they the same? How does it incorporate?
They started developing this musical in the 1970s. It premiered on Broadway in 1982 and won the Tony for Best Musical. They brought in the, at the time, up-and-coming director-choreographer Tommy Tune, who looked at the material and the script, and he realized that kind of what the most interesting hook of this story was Guido's relationship with all of the women in his life. His wife, he has a mistress, his mother. And Tommy Tune is the one who suggested to the book writers, you should make this show one man surrounded by all women otherwise, an all-woman cast except for the one leading man. And that was the direction they took with it, and that kind of contributed to its success. And that's kind of what the musical's ultimately known for, I think, most of all now, is being one man and, in our version, 22 women.
So this is not a show that is produced often. What drew you to it?
Yeah, it has only been produced, to my knowledge, one other time in Peoria. What drew me to the show, I started directing now almost 2 decades ago. It was a show that always kind of popped up, and I knew it was the show about one guy and a lot of women, And I always thought, well, that's kind of an interesting premise. Maybe I'll get to do that someday. Over the years, directing as many shows as I have, you see so many talented, incredible, interesting women walk through the door and audition for your show, and you can't always take all of them. Meanwhile, you need more guys for roles in your shows, and you don't get them showing up, and you have to start making phone calls and calling in favors and things like that. It's kind of the ugly side of directing, but reality. And I just thought, I want to finally have a show where the casting process is not stressful, where everyone who walks through the door is a very viable option, and we're able to use as many of them as we can. And that's what I got. And I even sort of doubled down on the concept of having a cast of almost all women. So 9 is about a director named Guido, surrounded by women. So I thought, well, I'll be the director of this show. Why don't I surround myself with women? And the crew, the production crew, is all women.
So without spoilers, what fascinates you most about the main character Guido and his relationship with all of these women?
Well, I definitely understand and identify with one aspect of Guido, the character, and that being just kind of his creative mind, what it's like to have a creative block, be surrounded by all these people, as a director kind of looking at you saying, okay, what do I do? And you sort of struggling with the imposter syndrome aspect of, gosh, I don't know, like all these people are looking at me for directions and I don't know what to tell them right now, or giving them direction and just hoping and praying you've made the right decision. What's interesting too is they're not just an ensemble. Each character sort of gets their own moment with Guido. They get their own song. You get a full play's worth of development on each of these women with just a couple scenes. You get to learn everything there is that you would need to know about them. And they're not just characters that happen to be in Guido's life. They are very interesting beings themselves.
You've been listening to Highlights of Out and About, a weekly production of Arts Partners of Central Illinois and WCBU. Catch the full interview at WCBU.org or subscribe to the podcast.
Support for arts and culture coverage on WCBU comes from PNC Financial Services. PNC is committed to supporting local art and culture events in the communities they serve.
Now, before we let you go, Peoria Art Guild welcomes 2 new exhibitions to their Harrison Street location for the month of August as part of their First Friday event tonight. See the new work at a free reception from 5 to 8 p.m. And that's all for today. You can subscribe to WCBU's On Deck podcast on the NPR app, Apple, Spotify, or YouTube Music.